Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, we have Hannah Cox, returning guest, brand ambassador, FEE Online, FEE Online, host of Base and fellow AFB, Virginia. Good to have you on the show again. How are you?
Good to be back with you, Dr. Richey.
So we're going to talk about mask mandates, vaccine protocols, etc. And I don't want to presume what you know or believe about the mask mandate conversation or the protocols for COVID-19. So give me your sentiment. What are your thoughts about what's happening out here?
Well, it's great to be back with you because I think yet again we can start this conversation from a place of agreeing. We don't want people to die. We want people to be able to live healthy lives. But I have major problems with not just mask mandates, but a lot of what has transpired, I refer to as pandemic policy over the past year and a half. And I include in that lockdowns, mask mandates, school closures, and now vaccine passports or vaccine mandates. I think that the problem over the past year and a half I've observed is that I have been consistently told to follow the science by people who do not indeed appear to be following the science, but rather following political parties or government leaders who have been proven wrong over and over and over again. And as I've watched these policies be implemented, we've watched serious ramifications come about. We've seen people pushed further into poverty. I think it's an estimate of 150 million people will be pushed into poverty as a result of what we've been doing. We've seen millions of people lose their jobs and their businesses and their homes. We've seen children lose years and years of schooling that those on the margins will never be able to recover. And at the same time, we've pushed many health things aside, like cancer screenings, heart operations. As a whole, I believe our response to this disease has actually been worse than the disease itself. And while we've been doing that, we've not been elevating things that actually could help people and make them safer. We've not been going about this in ways that actually could ensure that we can protect people from a pandemic while also upholding their rights, while also upholding our economy. And so I have many problems with how we've gone about this. And my biggest problem of all is feeling gaslit by people like Dr. Fauci and others in government who consistently have been wrong and never come back out and cop to that, never apologize to that, and really very rarely even correct the record. They just keep trying to go back and do the same things they've done in the past that haven't worked. So that's where I'm differing, I think, with you on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics. Do you believe masks decrease the spread of COVID-19?
I believe that medical masks decrease the spread of COVID-19, and I believe that we have not been able to get access to those at large. But I have data right in front of me from the NCBI, which is a department of the National Institute of Health, that says themselves, cloth masks show minimum efficacy in source control versus medical grade masks. The efficacy of cloth mask filtration varies and depends on the type of material used, number of layers, degree of moisture in the mask, and fitting the mask. Cloth face masks have limited efficacy as a whole in combating viral infection transmission. I think it's about 10%. It helps a little tiny bit, but the cloth mask, which is mostly what we're wearing, is largely security theater.
Well, let me tell you the data that I have from the NHL. Cloth mask can reduce the spread of COVID-19 because the majority of it spreads in droplets, about 40 to 60%. The medical mask that you are referring to can decrease the spread of COVID-19 by up to 91%. That is the CDC recommended protocol. If your issue with mask mandates, especially when we talk about mandates in school systems, is the type of mask, well, you can also mandate that as well if this is about safety and protocol. What we do agree on, based on the data, is that a mask decreases the spread of COVID-19. If your percentage model is as low as 10 or is as high as 91%. It sounds like the gap is education as it relates to what kind of mask is the most effective. But when we go to the school systems, because that's in the media every day, almost somebody at a school board meeting fighting, throwing hands, acting like children, being immature, committing criminal assault, right? Because school boards, we just had one conservative school board unanimously voted to reinstate mask mandates because they have almost 200 staff members, faculty, and students who are no longer there because of COVID exposure, right? So they said we got to make this decision locally, and they did so, contrary to the sentiment of some of those parents. So here's my next question to you. Do you believe that local school boards are unconstitutional when they do require a mask mandate, or is it within their constitutional or legal authority?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say I disagree more heavily when it comes to masking children than I do about the efficacy of masks in the general public. We see over and over that the studies that have been done show no statistical difference between schools that require masks and schools that don't. We see that other first world countries, including the UK, Ireland, all of Scandinavia, France, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Italy, do not mask their school children. And most importantly, there's no evidence of more outbreaks in these schools relative to schools in the US.
That is untrue. Let me cite, since you may not be aware of this data, but I want you to source it when you get a moment. Jackson, Mississippi, they do not follow mask protocols. The superintendent is a guy named Dr. Stryker. Dr. Stryker's positivity rate of COVID kids is almost at 7%. That's inside of the Jackson, Mississippi school system. They are not enforcing mask requirements whatsoever. There's another school system in LA, the independent school system. They are enforcing not only mask mandates, but also they require that all the school teachers get COVID vaccination. Their positivity rate, and they test every single Friday in that system, is at 0.5%, not even 1%. That is an actual real life example of protocol of mask working to decrease the spread of COVID-19 inside of a controlled environment known as a school system. And you have one that's 6 times higher than other surrounding schools because they are not enforcing mask. There you have it.
I don't know how you can say that that is because of masks, because again, we have this from the CDC at the end of May. The CDC released a study showing that distancing, hybrid models, HEPA filters, and most notably requiring students to wear masks found not to have a statistical significant benefit. We have a study that specifically analyzed 90,000.
Name that study to me. What? Number one, name that study to me. What's the name of that study you just cited that says it does not work?
It is the CDC study released in May that studied the distancing models and masking of kids in elementary schools.
So you're saying the CDC is on record for saying that masks do not decrease the spread of COVID?
They say they have no statistical significant benefit, and they cite a study specifically that they did of 90,000 elementary schools and 90,000 elementary students in 169 Georgia schools between November 16th to December 11th, where again, they found there was no statistical significant difference in schools that required masks and those that didn't. And again, there's also studies comparing our schools to all of these other first world countries that are not requiring masking.
Let me do this, Hannah. I have various studies from the CDC where they cite peer-reviewed research where masks do decrease the spread of COVID. So I'm looking at these studies now. I'm not sure what study you're referring to. I'm not saying you're not sourcing a study that they have cited at some point, but I'm telling you that the official conclusion based on the research index of the CDC is that masks decrease the spread of COVID-19. As a matter of fact, on their own website is one of their conclusions from the research. Properly worn masks decrease the spread of COVID-19 by up to 90%. So why would the CDC on their website come up with a conclusion in data that's contrary to the research? Number one.
I'm really happy to answer that for you because actually we just got the emails today that show why they put that on their website. It's because the teachers unions were threatening them to release a terrible press release. It's out in the news today, headlines everywhere. The teachers unions blackmailed them into this.
Got you. Okay, the CDC was blackmailed by school teachers. Got it. So you have an actual real life comparison of an entire school system who has said, by the direction of Dr. Stryker in Jackson, Mississippi, we will not enforce mask mandates in the school. They are inching to 7%. Hell, it may be closer to 8%, maybe 9% by the end of this week. They are, in comparison, almost 10 plus times higher than anyone around them. So
but
you're
do you not
telling
think there
me
could be other factors for that?
Tell me what other factors.
Surely there could be other factors. We already know that there are a multitude of things that actually do prevent COVID that they probably aren't doing because we're looking at Mississippi. Some of those things include a good healthy diet, being fit and in weight, being out in the sun, taking vitamin D, having good air filtration, having good ventilation.
What study can you cite that says a good healthy diet will stop you from spreading COVID-19? Tell me which study.
This has been everywhere. I don't have to pull every study done.
No,
you
but what
can Google this and find any number of studies that show you over and over and over. We see that people who are fit, people who are in good shape, do better with COVID.
Which one? Which study?
Which study?
Which study says if
Google
you have a healthy diet, you cannot spread COVID-19?
Over and over and over again. I'm not coming here with a Google computer to every interview to pull every study for you.
So you're telling me that these school children in Jackson, Mississippi, the reason why they have a higher COVID positivity rate is connected to their diet, not the fact that the doctor.
I'm not saying this or not. I'm saying there are a myriad of factors that contribute to COVID rates, and that you saying that the simple fact that they're not masking is the one reason that they have a higher rate.
Well, it's not just that. It's because they're not masking. Well, Hannah, it's not just that. It's because they're not masking. He does not enforce social distancing. There is no COVID protocol whatsoever in the school system. And children who test positive for COVID are allowed to still attend the school because he says he puts education over pandemic panic, okay?
That is your opinion. That is not a scientific analysis.
Ma'am.
And it doesn't negate the fact that
you just said it's connected to diet. Is that your opinion or a scientific analysis?
That is a scientific analysis, and on top of that, the other scientific analysis shows
that's a scientific analysis that the children in Jackson, Mississippi, have higher positivity rates in this one school district because of their diet.
I am saying that you cannot say one school district has higher rates and this is because of masking. That is an opinion. That is purely an opinion, and it does not answer for these myriad of other studies that show that there is no statistical difference, especially between states in the US.
You just named a statistical difference in your own data. You said in your own data.
I'm quoting is from the CDC. You want to sit here and pick apart the studies instead of looking them up.
Ma'am, you said in your own proclamation of the data that it had a 10% effective rate. Now, I'm a statistician. Anything over 3% we call statistically significant. So when you say it had a 10% effectiveness based on that data set that you're reading, that is contrary to you saying it is not statistically significant. Anything over 3 points on a statistical model is statistically significant.
It is not statistically significant. That is not the opinion of the scientists who are reporting on this analysis. And again, you cannot sit here and ignore this data that shows that our schools are very worse than schools that are not masking overseas. How do you explain
that are being hospitalized and having COVID? Back to my original question though. Do you think school boards have the authority within the law, within the Constitution? Do they have the authority to mandate masks?
Absolutely not. And there are so many problems that children can have and so many health effects that they can have from this that I think it's kind of crazy people would even suggest it. First and foremost, there is no end in sight to this. This is something that at this point, what you're arguing for is a perpetual masking of school children throughout the rest of their days. There's no end in sight. It just keeps moving. The ball keeps moving. We know that it causes all kinds of issues, possible breathing difficulties. It causes dangers of self-contamination, headaches, development of facial skin lesions, which I've myself experienced, by the way, from having to wear a mask, irritant dermatitis, acne, increased contamination due to improper mask disposal. The list goes on.
All of that is better than COVID-19. So let me ask you this question about your statement of school boards do not have the authority. Where in the Constitution does it prohibit, or where in the law does it prohibit school boards from having a mask mandate? Where is it at?
The Constitution isn't structured to give people power. It's structured to actually pull the government in, rein it in. It tells the government a very set list of what it can do, and that is it. Nowhere in there can you find a right for the school board to come in and tell people they have to wear something on their face for the rest of their days in order to access their education dollars.
So let me go ahead and give you some education on that. Number one, it actually is in the Constitution. It's in the 10th Amendment. Let me read it to you. The 10th Amendment says powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution
are left to the states. Are left to the states, not the school county boards.
Ma'am, I'm going to make the connection for you.
No, you cannot do mask mandates, and they're trying to override that. That's unconstitutional.
Ma'am, I'm going to help you out here, okay? The 10th Amendment of the Constitution says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, the reason why school boards can make what's called administrative law is because by statute, they are allowed to create these policies by state law. The reason why state law allows them to create these policies is because the 10th Amendment of the Constitution says if the United States government does not explicitly prohibit it, the power falls back to the state statutorily. So all of these, and madam, the state granted the school board the authority by statute to make administrative law. So by that virtue, school boards are not adversarial to the Constitution or the law. And let me remind you, madam, school boards are the one that mandate all the other vaccinations you must have: tetanus, chicken pox, etc. Those are still mandated. As a matter of fact, in Georgia and Florida, you got to get 6 mandated vaccinations to go to any K through 12 public school, and 92% of private schools. In places like California, they have even more of a mandate for vaccinations based on that protocol. So you don't think school boards have the ability to mandate those vaccinations? Have they been breaking the law for decades?
I don't, but I have to tell you, it really delights me to hear somebody on the left come to care about the 10th Amendment again, because it's the first time I've heard somebody on the left actually
damn right I care
push
about
the 10th Amendment a long time.
Now, man,
but
back to the original sentiment of your.
Incorrect.
Ma'am,
you're not totally wrong, but
I know I'm not wrong.
The 10th Amendment gives the states power, the state governments. The people who are prohibiting the school boards from setting mask mandates are the state governments. They have every authority to do that. The
let me
school
take you,
only
let me take you down another lesson trail here.
And in fact, I think what you're doing actually is making an excellent case for school choice, where families should be able to get their tax dollars and take it and run and go get their own schooling. Because right now the teachers unions continue to keep schools shut down for arbitrary reasons because they're trying to push through their pet policies. We're seeing that kids continue to fall behind. We are continuing to see them lose their bodily autonomy in our school system, which I think is corrupt and disgusting. I don't think the government ever has a right to tell you what to put in your body, and it can't tell you what not to put in your body. If you're against the war on drugs, you should be against vaccine mandates. It is not okay. It leads to very terrible repercussions when you empower them this way.
So, madam, there's no vaccine mandate federally for all general citizens. But let me go back to what you said about state law. You're incorrect about state law. State law is not what's prohibiting schools from mandating masks. These are executive orders outside of statutory formation. As a matter of fact, a judge in Florida ruled just a few days ago that the order of DeSantis, the executive order of DeSantis, was, and I quote, outside of his legal authority. Now, statutorily, the state legislature can pass a law limiting the actual authority of the school boards. They can do that because school boards operate by statute of the state. Now, you, ma'am, being I think close to libertarian, should appreciate the fact that in order to take power away from an established government, you must enact a statute and not an executive order, which the judge has already said you cannot change this statutory law based on the executive action of a governor. How do you not agree with that, judge?
I don't disagree with that. I'm not in favor of executive orders on hardly anything for the president or the governors, but we've also seen this pass at the legislative level, and what happens? The ACLU comes in and sues, people on the left come in and push back, they still don't respect that authority. So this is something where I don't think people are being consistent. If you want it passed through the state legislature, I'm fine with that. I think almost everything should go through the legislature in this country. That's a huge problem that we have. But let's not pretend like that when that does happen that people are letting it rest with that. They're not. They're still trying to fight back. They're still trying to come in and force these kids to wear masks. We even saw a teacher taping mask on one kid's face in one of these states recently.
Well, and listen, that's inappropriate. I'm a former school teacher. I would never tape anything to a child. If you're in violation of policy, you're in violation of policy. But let's be very clear. School boards, they have the authority based on statute to mandate vaccinations before entrance. They have the authority to mandate teachers have certain credentials before they can teach or be certified. They have the authority to enforce a dress code, and they have the authority to say you gotta wear a mask, you gotta wear shoes, you gotta wear dresses that are longer than this. They have the authority to do this, is my point, and they have the administrative law to support it. Let me remind people of a few things, because at these school boards, there's a lot of argumentation. And you would think, based on the reporting, that the majority of these parents are against mask mandates. Here's the data. 64% of parents are actually for their local government mandating masks in public places. That figure just came out not too long ago. It's printed in Forbes, and you have some other data sets. I'll break out a few of them. 70 to 75% of parents support mask mandates for students, teachers, and staff, okay? Another data set shows that 77%, this is the highest number out of the data set, they are against any Republican policy that would defund local governments or local school systems because they are contrary to the mask ban, okay? So you literally have the majority of parents are actually for mask mandates. The majority of school teachers are for mask mandates. The majority of these local communities are for mask mandates. And the majority, even the majority of Republicans, 58% of Republicans are against defunding schools over the mask mandate issue. Why is it that the minority is still winning the conversation here?
Well, because I think people have an individual choice. If you want to put a mask on your kid, nobody is prohibiting you. You're free to do that. You're absolutely within your rights.
What if a parent says, I don't want my child to get these required vaccinations, they need to still go to this school? What do you say to that?
I think all families, and this is my personal opinion long before COVID, should be able to take their tax dollars and use it towards whatever school they want. I think our Department of Education is garbage. I think we have kids stuck in racist school zones where they get disparate treatment. I think that as a whole, families should get those dollars. We should fund students. We shouldn't fund these systems. If they're any good, people will choose to utilize them. If they're not, let the kids get out and have a better shot at a better future.
So you agree with me that defunding and 77% of conservatives, I agree with 77% of conservatives and 92% of Democrats. And it sounds like you may agree with them as well, that defunding school systems because of a mask mandate argument is not proper for our children. We agree on that?
I don't really know what you mean by defund. I'm talking about education savings accounts, which is a long time
I understand it, but you correlate funding to education. So my point is, if you are in the middle of a court battle about mask mandates, and the governor says, or the Commissioner of Education says, we're now going to fine you. We're going to take away money from you every month from this school system. That is a no-no, right?
Is it or should it be?
Well, the judge said that the governor did not have the legal authority to do so through executive action, which really left it open to say that statutorily you probably can. But I don't think it should be the right thing to do. One of the rare places where Democrats and Republicans actually agree. Listen, my producers are telling me I'm out of time, but we will debate that issue next time because that's a whole different rabbit hole. All right?
Let's do it. Okay.
All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Good to see you again.
Indisputable.